Network, the NFL show, is brought to you as always by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Check them out, rcandt.com. Also, Manscaped, promo code TGT20. If you want to keep your balls happy, go to Manscaped. Use the promo code TGT20 to get 20% off your first purchase. I am your host for the NFL show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. How about you, Mike?
All right, we're going to talk a little NFL news. We'll finish up with a Panther-Falcon preview, but let's go ahead and let's start off. The big news, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have officially signed Antonio Brown. What do you think, Sam?
I mean, if it was my team, I wouldn't want him in that locker room just because of everything that's come out about him in the past year and a half. It's been so hectic. It's been so crazy. You never know when he's going to go off fly off the handle again. However, I mean, really, if we're looking at just from a football standpoint, ignore the personality for a second, ignore the off-field issues if you can. This guy is an all-pro. He's always been a very good worker on the football field. You're bringing him in on a very cheap deal, adding him to a roster that already has Chris Godwin and Mike Evans on it. Those guys have been injured early in the year. Just purely from a football standpoint, it's a very quality move for the Buccaneers to add a piece who has high potential and low risk because of his contract. From like a human standpoint, but I want him in the locker room, I really wouldn't.
I disagree. I want him. And the reason I want him is this. Tom Brady played with him not too long ago. He had a great game, caught a touchdown pass from Brady before everything fell apart there. This is to me, low risk, high reward thing. If you get the Antonio Brown that was Antonio Brown a couple years ago, you get the best receiver in football to go with Chris Godwin and Leonard Fournette. Mike Evans. Right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, to me, I know you had him number 3 on the power rankings. We talked about yesterday on our Rockfin exclusive show, but I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the best team in football.
See, I don't know if I go that far. I'm liking the Pittsburgh Steelers quite a bit right now. I know they don't have the same offensive firepower.
Give me a break. Don't give me the Steeler crap. Come on. They've got an old quarterback. They've got an average offensive line, average running backs, average wide receivers, and a great defense. Tampa Bay has a defense that is not as good as Pittsburgh, but how about this? Tampa Bay's defense is closer to being as good as Pittsburgh's, more than Pittsburgh's offense is even close to being Tampa Bay's offense.
I can give you that. I can agree with you there.
And you really are going to bet Ben Roethlisberger over Tom Brady in a game?
Well, it depends. If I'm being a homer, then absolutely I'm going to take Big Ben and Pittsburgh Steelers every game this year. I can tell you right now, I'm picking them every game from here to the end of the season.
No, you won't.
Yeah, I will. I already have.
You have? You picked the Steelers
so far this year. I picked Pittsburgh every week.
And you're undefeated. So there you go. All right. I sounded like Steve Risley. I said, there you go. And if Steve Risley's watching, he's supposed to do a show with us about Brady and Belichick that will make a Rockfin exclusive because he thinks that Brady is making Belichick look bad right now. And when we talk about Bill Belichick, probably the most valuable player on the roster in New England right now is Stefon Gilmore, and now there's rumors the Patriots might possibly trade him.
Yeah, he was obviously the reigning defensive player of the year. And now we're looking at a situation where he's expensive to keep around. He's 30 years old or so, and he's probably looking for even more to have the time frame to get this guy around because your team's going to be rebuilding a little bit. I really think you're going to be looking at a New England team that's going to be maybe 2 years away from being a top 10 team in the NFL again because of how much they have to rebuild on both sides of the ball. To me, keeping Gilmore doesn't make a lot of sense, and there's also been a rumor that he's putting his house up for sale or something like that. So there's a real chance here that he could be on the move. Of course, it comes down to whether or not teams are willing to offer New England a high enough draft pick to get him.
Well, how about this? What about the Seattle Seahawks as a perfect landing spot?
Yeah, that would be ideal. If you can do that, I would do that in a heartbeat because you think about getting Jamal Adams back. He's been hurt. He's going to come back eventually. You pair him with Stefon Gilmore in the backfield. You already have Shaquille Griffin, who's a pretty good cornerback, and Quentin Dunbar is all right as well. Suddenly, that defensive backfield that's been so terrible through the first couple of weeks of the season, you really flip that on its head when you add a guy like Stefon Gilmore, the reigning defensive player of the year. That changes everything.
Yeah, plus they added Carlos Dunlap. Now, whether Dunlap has anything left or not remains to be seen. But Seattle, if they upgrade that defense, they could be the biggest challenger to the best team in the NFL, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with the greatest quarterback that ever lived, Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, they could be the really big challenger for them in the NFC because they have Russell Wilson, who I think we could say right now is probably playing the best quarterback in football so far, despite that 3-interception game against Arizona. You have that terrific offense with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, which is arguably as good of a wide receiver duo as Chris Godwin and Mike Evans at this point, if not better. You've got that offensive firepower. Just comes down to fixing that defense.
All right, next up, another interesting trade that would be huge. The Green Bay Packers are interested in Will Fuller, the Houston Texan wide receiver. I think you put Will Fuller there with Devontae Adams, and then maybe there's another challenger to the Bucs. I still don't think there is, though, when it comes to Green Bay, because I still think there's some defensive problems with stopping the run. And I also think that there's some offensive line issues in Green Bay also. But Will Fuller just makes that offense that much more dangerous.
Yeah, defensively, they're not going to be on the same level as a Pittsburgh or a Tampa Bay. I don't think they're ever going to get there, despite having some talented personnel like Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark. I just don't see them reaching a level of being one of those top 5 defenses in the NFL. And then offensively, David Bakhtiari's been injured a little bit this year. They lost Brian Bulaga in free agency this past offseason. So you have some issues there, some question marks about that offensive line, about the continuity they've had from past years. So there are some issues up front on both sides of the ball, I would argue. But adding Will Fuller would really give this offense a boost because you're talking about Allen Lazard is basically your second-string receiver when he's healthy, and he's been beat up a little bit too. The other guys out there, Malik Taylor, Darius Shepard, St. Brown, they really don't have another star wide receiver. Will Fuller, to me, is not going to be a star receiver, but when he's healthy, this is still a guy who can get you probably 600 to 700 yards a year, and they really need that behind Devontae Adams.
Yeah, and what you look at, you just named me a bunch of guys that are 3 and 4s. They're missing the number 2. Will Fuller is that guy. And if you're the Houston Texans, you might as well cut bait because Bill O'Brien already ruined this roster. You might as well get as much in return as you can because you do have Deshaun Watson to build around. And since I'm calling here right now, Eric Bieniemy will be the new head coach in Houston at the end of the season. I think they're in a situation where they can rebuild this in just a year or two with Deshaun Watson.
Wait, you mentioned before, to you, Deshaun Watson is a bigger form of Russell Wilson and even potentially a better long-term quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. If you really believe that, you can certainly accomplish quite a bit with him and turn this team around really quickly because you have the franchise quarterback. That's the hardest thing to get. You have a franchise left tackle as well. To me, the biggest issue would be maybe like the J.J. Watt contract, some of the bad contracts you're giving out on the defensive side of the ball. How do you negotiate those moving forward?
Yeah. And, of course, we have the normal COVID update from the NFL. And now you've got the Giants and the Chargers have got players that are tested positive for COVID. The New York Giants, Will Henderson, he tested positive for COVID. And the way this is blowing up around the country, Sam, you got to have some concerns about how this season finishes or if this season finishes.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the national COVID-19 numbers, but I've heard just briefly mentioning in some conversations that they're going up. It felt like we were finally getting past this point. This past week with the NFL, I thought we were moving past it, and apparently we aren't. We're just getting dragged back into it all over again. But they've done with this before. They dealt with this already, I think, 2 weeks ago, where they had these kind of issues and they overcame it. We ended up pushing a couple of games around, moving a little bit the schedule around, and we still played every game we want to so far, and they're still planning on finishing the season on time. If they did it once before, I think they can still do it again if they have to. I believe we'll finish the season out. I know there are going to be continuous concerns throughout the year. I have faith that we're going to finish this year.
All right. Well, there's so much money. Have to do to finish the year. It's the NFL, Sam.
Yeah, we've seen them put money above everything else in the past. We talk about things like head injuries or anything like that. They've put money above things in the past, so they'll finish the year. There's too much money in the hand.
All right, tonight, Thursday Night Football. We got the Panthers and the Falcons. To me, this is an interesting game that I think could go either way. The Panthers have played better so far this year, but the Falcons are still dangerous, Sam.
Yeah, the Falcons, of course, when you look at them offensively, that's what really makes a difference. You've got Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. It's one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL right now. Alex Mack at center is still a quality player. You have Russell Gage as your number 3 option. That's another good piece. Hayden Hurst at tight end and Todd Gurley at running back. You have a very good offense here. All the offensive line is a little bit questionable, I would say. Other than that, you have a top offense potentially here. The only issue is that Matt Ryan this year has not played up to the level I expected him to. I thought he was going to have a very good year. He's had a very average year at best. I think it really comes down to this game comes down to how will Matt Ryan and Teddy Bridgewater play. because Bridgewater had some up and down games this year. Like I said, Matt Ryan needs to play better.
Yeah, and if you look at this, Atlanta came into the season with high hopes for a potential playoff run after winning 6 of their final 8 games to close 2019. But losing their first 5 games of 2020 led to a change in plans, costing head coach Dan Quinn and general manager Thomas Dimitrioff their jobs. But they still have a troubling inability to finish games. Raheem Morris saw his team lose when Todd Gurley scored a touchdown by accident, putting the Falcons ahead 22-16. And it tells you the kind of shape you're in when the Detroit Lions are the team that's busting your ass at the end of the game, doesn't it?
Yeah, though Matt Stafford does have a lot of comebacks throughout his career, but really, I mean, we talked about this. It was going to be a very big measuring stick for Atlanta to see where they could go moving forward when they placed the Lions. And they ended up losing because of silly mistakes, which has been what they've done the entirety of the year. They've lost because of silly mistakes. And at this point, I have very little faith left for Atlanta, but this is a game where I think they could actually win. They're playing a divisional rival. They're meeting up against Matt Rule, I think, for the first time. I give them a high chance of actually winning this game because they don't have Christian McCaffrey on the other side.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey, a lot of people thought there was a chance he would play this week, but he will not after the high ankle sprain. Looks like he probably will be back in a week and a half, though. And in McCaffrey's absence, the Panthers have focused more on their passing attack. They are actually 11th in the league by throwing for 263.7 yards per game. Teddy Bridgewater is posting 8.2 yards per attempt, tied for 6th in the league. And he hasn't been afraid to throw the deep ball to receivers Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, Sam.
Yeah, weren't you the one mocking Carolina's weapons the other day? I'm pretty sure you were. You were asking what weapons do Carolina have? And what they do, they have Robbie Anderson, they have DJ Moore. These guys are in the top 10 right now for receiving yards for the season. They have one of the best wide receiver duos in the league right now. I know not a lot of people know about Robbie Anderson because he was in New York the past couple of years, but he's really having not a breakout year, but certainly a stellar year with Teddy Bridgewater. DJ Moore was already a 1,000-yard wide receiver this past season. So they have 2 good receivers. The question to me, though, is how will the offensive line hold up? Atlanta doesn't have a good pass rush, so maybe they'll do fine. And then what about the tight end spot? Do you get any production out of the tight end spot for Carolina?
There he is. I don't know what happened, Sam. Where you at?
I'm right here. I don't know where you went. You vanished on my screen.
I think we all vanished. So when you look at this game, what were you giving me a hard time about? Robbie Anderson, good wide receivers. I still wouldn't say with no Christian McCaffrey, there's still not a whole lot of weapons on this offense. They do solid guys, but without McCaffrey, I don't think that there's a whole lot there.
But there's not a go-to guy. Like Christian McCaffrey, you can turn the ball and hand off to him at any time in the game. You can hit him out of the backfield. He's your go-to option. I don't think – while DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are good receivers, I don't think they are the go-to options that you would go after every single play.
So even though you gave me hell about it, you're right now just admitting I was right.
Well, you deserve to be given hell about it, Mike, because you were wrong.
How was I wrong? You just said they don't have enough weapons. They just got good weapons. But
you were saying they didn't have any weapons.
I didn't say they didn't have any. I said they don't have a whole lot of weapons. Go back and pull the tape.
Hey, I'm pretty sure I'll be right when we do.
I don't think you will. I don't think you'll be able to find it. We burn it.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to find it either. If it's not on the Facebook page,
right,
I'm probably not going to find it.
Panthers Falcons. Who do you like tonight, Sam?
You know what? The Panthers are a better football team, but I'm just going to keep picking the Falcons until they eventually win a game here. This is going to be my first, I guess, upset pick of the week, I guess you'd say. I'll take the Falcons here. Maybe Matt Ryan and Julio Jones finally get themselves over the top here and win a football game.
I'm going to take the Panthers. I think they've got the better coach. I think right now they've got the better quarterback, Sam.
I mean, I'm not going to say you're wrong because Matt Ryan has not played particularly fantastic football this year. I have Teddy Bridgewater ranked ahead of Matt Ryan on my quarterback power rankings because he has played better to a large degree, with the exception of maybe that Chicago game. But other than that, he's outplayed Matt Ryan.
All right. I'm going to go with the Panthers. I think the Panthers win the game 20. to 16. You got to give us
If
four, Sam.
If I'm taking the Falcons, I'm going to say it's got to be like 35 to 24.
All right. I don't think the Falcons can put 35 points on the Panthers. Anything else we want to talk about, Sam?
I mean, there's not a ton of news going around, so it's kind of difficult to figure out like what we're going to add on here. But really, I mean, looking ahead to this weekend, is there any matchups? I know we're going to preview them all tomorrow, so I don't want to go through everything tonight. But is there anything you want to talk about specifically from the matchups this weekend that stand out as like make or break games or potential upsets? I mean, I'm looking at the schedule right now, and to me, the Rams-Dolphins game is probably the most intriguing one of the weekend besides maybe San Francisco-Seattle.
Yeah, but to me, that's intriguing just because you've got, Tua's playing. And if Tua ends up being like a Joe Burrow or a Justin Herbert, then the Miami Dolphins are in play to possibly even win the AFC East.
Yeah, because I'm not putting it past Josh Allen to, how I put this lightly, fall apart at the end of the year because he had a very hot start. For the past 3 games, he has not been an elite quarterback. So if he, for some reason, whether it's injuries to the shoulder, I don't know what it would be, whether it's poor offensive line play, if he starts having a lot more trouble, I wouldn't put it past Miami because Miami's playing harder than Buffalo right now.
All right, games that stand out to me, and this may sound crazy, but the Colts and the Lions. Because I think the Lions are kind of on that tipping point of whether they can have a shot to make a run this year or not. And we talked about it last night on the Rockfin special, the exclusive show about the power rankings. I think Detroit's season could come down to this game, whether they have a chance to do anything or not this year.
Yeah, you walked us through the rest of the schedule, and you said if they win this game right here, they've got a fairly easy stretch eventually coming up for them where they could win 3 or 4 games in a row. If they pull that off, you're looking at a team that maybe has 9 wins, maybe has 8 wins, and gets that final wildcard spot. I still think they're going to finish third in this division. I know you said second. I still think they're going to finish third behind Chicago. I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum than you.
Yeah, and come on, the game of the week has to be the Steelers and the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the one that I know everyone's going to want to watch. I mean, the only let's say powerhouse games out there, maybe San Francisco, Seattle if you're a West Coast fan, but for us, it's got to be Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Because Baltimore is still a very good team. They've had Pittsburgh's number to some degree over the past 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'm picking Pittsburgh again. When we get to tomorrow, I will take the Steelers. I will take them. But it's going to be a very close game and hopefully an exciting one.
All right, Raiders-Browns. That to me is interesting because you have a team with 5 wins, another team that's at 500. I think this is a huge game for Las Vegas. I think it's a huge game for Cleveland. If either one of these teams want to be a real playoff contender, a win by Cleveland over the Raiders, Cleveland's already at 6 wins? They're a legit playoff team. I don't think they're a threat to anybody. And I also think this, Shelley, who writes the Brown stuff, made the big post about Baker's back. Let's face it, Baker Mayfield beat the Cincinnati Bengals. What the hell does that mean? It means nothing. When we saw Baker Mayfield against the 2 best defenses he's played, the Ravens and the Steelers, he got bludgeoned. So it wouldn't surprise me if Vegas beats him. Plus, it's a rematch at a 1980 AFC divisional playoff game, Sam.
There you go. Throw in that historical fact in there at the very end. But really, you're right.
Sam, before we get away from it, tell me a little bit about that 80 AFC divisional playoff game.
I can't, Mike. That was, 19 years before I was born.
19 years before I was born was 1949. I think the Eagles played the Cardinals in a championship game. If you want, I can talk about it, or you can explain to me. 1980, you had the Cardiac Browns, who at the time I think were the number 1 seed, and they played
I'll look it up real quick.
The Raiders were a wild card team playing with a backup quarterback because people forget Jim Plunkett wasn't the starter at the start of that year. It was Dan Pastorini, and Pastorini broke his leg like week 4 or 5. Plunkett came in, leads them. They came up just short in winning the division. The Chargers won that. And then Mike Davis intercepted the pass against Cleveland. It was 14-12. I think the ball was inside the 20. They could have kicked a field goal, but Fred Cox, I think, was the kicker for the Browns then. No, it wasn't Fred Cox. That was Minnesota. Who was the Browns field goal kicker? Don Cockcroft.
It was Don.
Cockcroft.
Yep.
That fits in with Manscaped and TGT20 promo code with the Dan Cockcroft. But I think he'd missed like 3 kicks in that game. Sam Rutigliano, who was the Browns coach, was afraid to kick it. So for some reason, they throw it in the back of the end zone. I think it was the Ozzie Newsome, or it was the big white guy that was a pretty good receiver for him. I can't remember his name. But Mike Davis picks it off. The Raiders go to San Diego the next week, win 34-27 over the Chargers, and then became the first wild card team to win the Super Bowl when they beat the Eagles 27-10, Sam.
There you go. There's your history. And you were right. The Browns finished, at the very least, they finished first within the division that they had. They tied with the Houston Oilers for record at 11-5, but ended up finishing in first place in the Central.
Yeah, because actually that Oilers team had to play Oakland in Oakland, because I think Oakland was 11-5 that year also, but had the tiebreaker, correct?
Oakland was 11-5, you're correct.
Yeah, so they had the tiebreaker. They play Houston. They completely shut down Earl Campbell after the first quarter or so and beat him 27-10. Lester Hayes, I think, had a pick to pretty much seal the game. So that was a great Raiders team. If you look at the teams they beat in the playoffs, they beat an 11-5 Houston Oilers team. They beat a 12-4, I think, Cleveland Brown team, and then a 12-4 San Diego Charger team. And that Browns team was really special. They called them the Cardiac Browns or the Cardiac Kids. It seemed like every game they played was a last-second win. And to win the division in 1980, the Browns in the Battle of the Ohio played the Bengals, who were like 6-9 going into that game. And the Browns won the game in the last minute, which sealed the division, or they would have been the wild card team going to Oakland, and they probably get knocked out then.
So if they won so many games at the very end of those games, why were they so, worried about kicking a field goal? I mean, if they had won so many games at the end, I would assume that the kicker at least made some plays there. Why were they afraid of kicking it?
Because Cockcroft missed 3 or 4 kicks in that game. The weather, I think, without wind chill, was like -2 or -3. And you had that Lake Erie winds coming off the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium where the wind kind of swirls all over the place. But I think they didn't trust. Cockcroft was one of the last straight-ahead kickers also. So a lot of times, the ball would kind of shank off the side if the weather wasn't perfect because he's towing the ball, basically. And I think that's why they did it. But to this day, I would think they would regret it. But let's face it, it's the Browns. If he's kicking the field goal, he's going to miss it.
Yeah, that's what happens to those. So going back a little bit to modern day, I mean, there's no ways they missed the playoffs, right? I mean, if they won and got to 6-2, you would have to say they have to make the playoffs. So they can't possibly collapse to the point that they don't make the playoffs after that, right?
Who, the Browns?
Yeah.
I'd rather talk about the 1980 Browns. But, yeah, at 6-2, let's look at their schedule real quick. I'll pull it up. I mean, you would think they've already played their 2 Bengals games, so that was your 2 free wins. They played the Texans. They played the Eagles. Yeah, the Browns are going to be – if the Browns win this game, you got Texans, Eagles, Jaguars. You lose to the Titans. You lose to the Ravens. They play the Giants, the Jets, the Steelers. Man, these guys could be 11-5 by the time this is done.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, we could have 3 teams get to 10 wins in the AFC North this year.
You could have 3 teams get to 11 wins in the AFC North this year.
So is the AFC North a better division than the NFC West then?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, Seattle has holes. You look at teams like Pittsburgh and Baltimore, not a lot of holes. Cleveland has some holes, but who's the 4th place team in the West?
49ers.
That's the only problem. If you go top 3, I think the AFC North is better. When you get to the 4th, you got the lowly-ass Bengals picking up the rear, and they can score points, and every Bengal game is going to be exciting, but every Bengal game is going to end like it did last week with the Bengals losing 37-34. So, I mean, if you go top to bottom, all 4 teams, total depth, the NFC West is better. But I don't know that you'll find a division with 3 teams at the top better. I mean, if we match it up right now, Seattle or Baltimore, I'd probably go Seattle just because of Russell Wilson. Who's the number 2 team? The Rams. Go Rams or Steelers? I'd take the Steelers. 3, 49ers, Browns. Or Cardinals, Browns. Cardinals, Browns, I don't know. If Nick Chubb's healthy, I may go Browns. But the big difference here is number 4, 49ers or Bengals.
Yeah, that's a pretty different slide there. Those are 4 really good teams right now in the NFC West. And AFC North, obviously, there's 3 good ones. And then your Cincinnati Bengals at the very bottom.
Well, I mean, put it like this. How many teams in the NFC West do you believe are actual possible Super Bowl winners?
1 or 2. I would say Seattle just because of Russell Wilson. And I don't want to put the Rams in there, but I feel like I have to because they have the best defense in that division. And I think there's a chance they get hot at the right time.
I wouldn't put the Rams in there as a serious Super Bowl contender. I would put Seattle there. In the AFC North, I would put Baltimore and Pittsburgh there. I still have questions about Lamar Jackson. I'm the only man in America that does. But I still don't buy him. I mean, in the AFC North, if you had to tell me right now somebody in the AFC North was going to win the Super Bowl, I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I don't think anybody in the AFC North is going to win the Super Bowl, but the Steelers would be my first pick just because they're better on defense and they've got the better quarterback.
Yeah, I would pick them first too because they've actually been running the ball better than Baltimore so far this year, and they have the better defense. And to be honest, I trust Big Ben in these kind of game situations where they have to win games at the very end. I feel just it's comfortable because of how much he's done it in the past.
Now, can we go back to the 1980 playoffs because we haven't even touched on the NFC yet?
All right, let's go.
I'm kidding. You don't know nothing. It's like me reading you a book at bedtime.
It kind of is, honestly.
I know. But the Philadelphia Eagles finally beat the Dallas Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl. But Dick Vermeil was too much of a tight ass going into New Orleans. And basically, he put them under COVID lockdown while the Raiders went out and partied. And the Raiders won the Super Bowl. End of story. Good night, Sam. Anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No, I think we hit on everything we want to talk about today.
All right, guys, make sure you check us out at Rockfin. We have exclusive content there, including our show on the NFL Power Rankings. Maybe a show later today, according to what Sam's up to. And we need to get Steve Risley on to do the Belichick-Brady thing because that'd be fun. So keep an eye out there at Rockfin. You can go sign up for free. To get the premium content, you got to pay $9, but it gives you the premium content of everybody, including guys like Tom Lemming, Jason Burmis. So make sure you check us out on Rockfin there. All of our podcasts you can hear on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, we're there. And we will be back live tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Maybe we'll try to find us a guest picker to go ahead and pick against because I don't think we've had any guest pickers that got the better of us so far.
No, we haven't. We beat them every time.
Yes, we have dominated. So you can tweet us at Grilling Truth if you want to come on and pick the games against us. Maybe we can get Bobby Sheridan from the Sheridan Report on the pick. Or maybe we can get Risley to come on and pick. Because if Risley comes on and picks, we'll both look like geniuses.
Yeah. We could go 8-8 and still look very good.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Steve? Sam Teets has personally challenged you. All right, guys. Make sure you check out Manscaped TGT 20. We will go full bore on shaving our balls next Monday. And we'll tell you all about it on the show to see if it really makes your balls happy. There's ball deodorant in there too, Sam.
I mean, I'm going to go pick it up tomorrow, so I'll see it for myself when I open it.
Well, make sure you reach down and smell it and let us know how it goes. All right, we're going to wrap it up, guys. So for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.